Imagine stepping onto a silent film set in 1919. Large wooden cameras perched on wheeled tripods, studio lights glaring down, and the faint chemical smell of early film stock permeating the air. In the middle of the controlled chaos stands Wallace Reid, a strapping, handsome actor with broad shoulders, a bright smile, and easygoing confidence. Known as Wally to his friends, he's Paramount's golden boy, a reliable box office draw who can transition smoothly from comedic racing adventures to rugged melodramas. Fans flock to see him drive race cars on screen, barrel down dusty roads, or woo leading ladies with a mixture of boyish charm and manly vigor. Behind that carefree grin, though, a ticking time bomb quietly begins its countdown, because on this particular day in the redwood forest near Arcata, California, everything is about to change. The film is The Valley of the Giants, a forest-set drama featuring a dramatic scene involving a steam locomotive. Reid, ever the dedicated performer, insists on performing some of the riskier bits himself. The day starts off routine enough, crew members adjusting tracks, testing camera angles, verifying that the stunts are safe. Then something goes awry. Accounts differ on the specifics. Some say a brake malfunction, others recall a miscommunication about the train's speed. What's undeniable is that in a split second, a minor miscalculation escalates into catastrophe. The train lurches unexpectedly, sending Reid stumbling. He collides with metal so hard that the top of his scalp is gashed open, an ugly 3-inch wound that bleeds profusely. Crew members rush him to a local doctor, while producers anxiously weigh the ramifications. The top star in jeopardy, schedule threatened, budget at risk. The immediate fix is to disinfect, bandage, and keep filming. Wally, known for soldiering on, attempts to push aside the pain. Except the pain is excruciating. It throbs day and night. The doc prescribes morphine, common enough in the 1910s for severe injuries. The first injection hushes the agony, allowing Reid to remain upright for his scenes. He shrugs it off as a temporary measure. What no one realizes at the time is that morphine isn't just a painkiller in an era with limited medical alternatives. It's also highly addictive. Soon, Reid's wounded scalp partially heals, but the throbbing lingers. The film's schedule is relentless, and Paramount can't afford to lose its matinee idol. So the studio's fix is to keep him on a morphine regimen. Morphine dulls the pain, but also brings a buoyant, dreamy glow, an artificial calm that counters the stress of daily 12-hour shoots. Reid, already prone to a nightly drink or two, finds himself sliding into something deeper, a cycle he can't easily escape. Over the next 3 years, from 1919 to 1922, Wallace Reid becomes the studio's unstoppable workhorse, cranking out more than 20 films. Titles like The Roaring Road, 1919, and Excuse My Dust, 1920, cement his on-screen persona as the charming daredevil who can race cars or pilot airplanes. Audiences adore him. Women in the 1920s, liberated by short bobs and rising hemlines, crush on his mix of clean-cut face and sly grin. Men envy his swagger, his easy heroics, his comedic timing. The press calls him the screen's most perfect lover, a squeaky clean heartthrob who always prevails. On posters, he's the ideal all-American star. Meanwhile, in the privacy of his dressing room, Reid's dependence on morphine deepens. He also drinks to steady his nerves. The punishing shooting schedules demand a constant high just to function, and for a time, the studio hushes it up effectively. Publicly, he's always bright-eyed and polite at premieres, but anyone who sees him up close can detect the strain, the slight tremor in his hands, the tension lines around his eyes. Yet the studio churns out press releases praising his unstoppable energy, fueling the myth of a star who never sleeps. The mania of silent-era filmmaking, rife with back-to-back shoots and minimal labor protections, only exacerbates the problem. Then, an unwelcome spotlight turns on him. In April 1921, while traveling through Portland, Oregon, a policeman stops Reid's car. Prohibition is in full swing, making the mere presence of alcohol in one's vehicle a legal risk. Sure enough, Reid's trunk contains booze. He's promptly detained. Paramount leaps into crisis management, dispatching lawyers to hush the incident and keep coverage minimal. They succeed to a large extent, and the official penalty is meager. But rumors swirl. Isn't that Wallace Reid, that squeaky clean idol carting around contraband? The tabloids run small blurbs referencing a beloved star's slip-up. And while the official story downplays the bust, fans notice the cracks in his pristine image. Those who read between the lines suspect that behind the scenes, something is off. The scandal, though overshadowed by the drama of prohibition raids on bigger names, subtly erodes the public's unwavering admiration. By 1922, the cracks widen. On set for 30 days, he simply can't keep up the facade. Morphine aside, his insomnia intensifies, his appetite vanishes, and withdrawals torment him when supply is scarce. Crew members whisper about his shaky hands, the drawn face he hides with makeup. He collapses in the middle of scenes, stumbles, or slurs lines. People who once glimpsed only an affable star now witness a man disintegrating. Someone in the studio leaks hints to the press about Reid's dope fiend meltdown. For fans, it's shocking. They see in film magazines two photos side by side, one from 1919, robust at 180 pounds, eyes shining, and the other from 1922, under 130 pounds, his cheekbones sharp, gaze vacant. The rumor that Paramount is forcing him to keep working despite obvious addiction triggers moral outrage. Journalists start asking if Hollywood's factory-like demands are literally killing Wallace Reid. The scandal picks up traction. Is Tinseltown devouring its own golden boy? Paramount tries damage control, but it's too late. The meltdown is undeniable. At year's end, Dorothy Davenport, Reid's devoted wife and herself an actress, intervenes. She pleads with the studio to allow him time off for real treatment. Maybe they can salvage his life, if not his career. Under mounting public pressure, Paramount grudgingly agrees, and Dorothy checks Reid into a sanitarium in Hollywood in late 1922. But the damage is extensive. His system, battered by morphine, alcohol, and overwork, can't rally the way a healthier body might. He's skeletal, racked by tremors, plagued by delirium whenever he withdraws from the drug. Some nights he howls for relief, cursing the doctors, the studio, the entire world. On January 18th, 1923, at only 31 years old, Wallace Reid succumbs to what the official report labels complications from influenza and exhaustion due to narcotic withdrawal. Others quietly blame the final morphine crash or a lethal synergy of drug-induced organ failure. No autopsy is performed. The hush around the cause only spawns conspiracies. Did a doctor slip him a fatal dose? Did his heart fail from the combination of morphine, booze, and relentless filming? We'll never know. But the simplest truth is that his body finally gave out. His funeral, held on January 21st, 1923, at the Church of the Blessed Sacrament in Hollywood, draws a massive crowd. Fans line the streets. Weeping women clutch bouquets. Men tip hats in solemn respect. The pallbearers include prominent stars like William S. Hart and Eugene Pallette. Some insiders remark on the dark irony that the industry that cheered him on as he performed stunts while doped is now publicly mourning him with grand eulogies. He's laid to rest at Forest Lawn Memorial Park in Glendale, in the great mausoleum's Azalea Terrace. Newspaper headlines proclaim him The first major star lost to Hollywood's hidden epidemic of substance abuse, the tragedy resonates. A 31-year-old idol, once the embodiment of youth and strength, now entombed. Everyone wonders how it all spiraled so fast. In the aftermath, Dorothy Davenport channels her grief into activism. Trading her stage name for Mrs. Wallace Reid, she embarks on a crusade against narcotics. She produces and stars in Human Wreckage, 1923, a raw docudrama highlighting the perils of drug addiction, drawing from her own agonizing experiences. The film tours the country, stirring audiences with gritty scenes reminiscent of Reid's final months. Dorothy stands on stage after screenings, tears in her eyes, warning that her husband's downfall was no isolated cautionary tale. It could happen to any star or any young person seduced by quick cures for pain. She transforms from a grieving widow into a reluctant reformer, traveling from city to city to confront an America grappling with prohibition and a rising drug trade. Critics call the film exploitative, but Dorothy insists it's a necessary shock. She hopes to jolt the public into demanding accountability from studios that risk their actors' health for profit. The scandal also spurs the early formation of the MPPDA, Motion Picture Producers and Distributors of America, under Will Hayes, designed to clean up Hollywood's tarnished image in the wake of multiple controversies, from Reid's demise to the Fatty Arbuckle trial. The Hayes Code eventually emerges, though its initial aim is as much about sanitizing public perception as it is about regulating moral content on screen. Wallace Reid's tragedy serves as Exhibit EA, a symbol that if Hollywood doesn't self-regulate, the government or outraged moral crusaders might step in. The result is a sanitized environment that ironically punishes creative risk while claiming to protect stars from the vice-laden temptations of Tinseltown. Yet underneath, the studios remain powerful, and stories of exploitation simply fade from public memory once the tabloids move on to new scandals. Over time, Wallace Reid drifts into the back pages of film history, overshadowed by the gangster flicks of the 1930s, and later by talkie-era icons like Clark Gable. The silent era recedes, replaced by fresh stars and new controversies. Decades pass. Then periodic revivals of interest in early Hollywood resurrect his story. Historians point to him as the cautionary tale of an industry that churned actors like cogs in a machine. Younger cinephiles watch his surviving films, finding a dynamic presence that presages later matinee idols. They spot the comedic flair in his car racing pictures or the earnest romantic hero in his melodramas, and wonder how such a star could vanish from mainstream lore. They read about the train accident and the morphine, see parallels in modern Hollywood's battles with prescription painkillers, and realize how cyclical the pattern is. In Q&As or film retrospectives, archivists talk about how Reid's passing contributed to the shift in industry ethics, fueling the debate about labor conditions and studios' paternalistic control. They lament that his legend never had the same posthumous aura as James Dean or Marilyn Monroe, but marvel that his death arrived at a critical juncture, prompting small but significant reforms. Many in the audience hearing these stories ask, could he have survived if the accident had happened decades later, when medical science offered safer, non-addictive alternatives to morphine? Could better union protections or shorter working hours have saved him from being worked to the bone? These what-ifs hover like ghosts over his memory, revealing a talent stifled by an era's ignorance and exploitation. The tragedy stands not just in his fatal overdose, but in how the system's relentless demands and hush-up strategies propelled him toward that end. Reid's funeral, though grand at the time, didn't leave behind the mythic echoes that accompany the passings of Rudolph Valentino or Jean Harlow. Yet for those who attended, the sight of fans lined up for blocks, sobbing or gazing in stunned disbelief, was unforgettable. In old newspaper photos, you can see men in fedoras lined along the street, women in cloche hats clutching crumpled handkerchiefs. The casket was draped in floral wreaths, tributes from co-stars and fans who cherished his breezy charm. One might think, so much heartbreak for a star who died so young. He was only 31. But the silence that followed set the stage for how Hollywood often addresses controversies: stoic condemnation, a few tributes, and then pivot to the next big star. Over time, the Wallace Reid name became a footnote, the first big star to die from Hollywood's hidden doping problem. And so we remember Wallace Reid not merely as the dashing face on those silent reels or the comedic lead in a racing cap, but as a tragic figure whose short life encapsulated the hidden perils of early Hollywood. The final scene might be that enormous funeral, thousands lining the streets in quiet shock, seeing his casket pass by with a wreath-laden hearse, just as fans in the silent era had thronged to see his movie premieres. The cameras that once adored him now record a casket, lowering him into the Glendale mausoleum, and a collective hush settles, the hush of regret, the hush of an audience that glimpsed too late the cost of stardom. In that hush, we might still hear the faint echo of an orchestrated silent film score, poignant, melancholic, and cut off before its finale. That's Wallace Reid's story. And it's a cautionary tale that resonates a century later every time an actor's meltdown or overdose hits the headlines, reminding us that behind the glitz and the camera flashes, every star is human, pain, vulnerability, and all.